Hey, it's Hillary. Join me for a helpful and hopeful chat about mental health in our community. So grab a cup of coffee or tea. This is Wedgwood's Coffee Break Conversation. Joining us is Pastor LeRae Kuperus, one of our incredible chaplains here at Wedgwood. Thanks for sitting down with me today.
It's a joy to do that with you, Hillary.
So do you want to share a little bit more about yourself and what you do here at Wedgwood?
Sure. Well, my actual title is Director of Spiritual Formation. I've actually worked at Wedgwood for 26 years.
Wow.
I started as a part-time chaplain, and I thought I would stay for 3 to 5 years, and that didn't happen, obviously. Here I am today, and my job right now really entails leadership in our chaplaincy department, providing spiritual care to both our staff and to our clients, helping to set a positive and affirming workplace culture, and as well developing supports for our staff and clients. Those both being spiritual supports and supports actually that promote a healthy well-being.
So here at Wedgwood, our overarching focus is mental health on the services we provide. And faith and spirituality are a huge part of what you do as a chaplain. Yes. Can you talk about how you see that all work together?
I want to define a little bit what mental health is and also what spiritual health and spirituality is. So when I think of mental health, I think of an overall positive well-being. I think of a person who is affirming oneself by taking care of oneself. But then actually with that positive well-being, they're connecting to something greater than themselves. They see purpose in their lives and they see meaning in what they're doing. When I think of spirituality, I think of how we look at the world and that we actually see the world beyond just what we see and feel, that there's something beyond this. For Christians and even for other faith religions, we believe that that is a divine entity. In the Christian faith, we define that as God, the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. And with spirituality, we are looking for purpose in our relationship with the divine and with our bigger understanding of the world. How I see those two connect is when you have a healthy sense of yourself, you know that you're contributing to the betterment of society. And I also believe where it connects mostly is in the greatest commandment defined for us by Jesus Christ in the New Testament. Love God first and then love your neighbor as yourself. Often we have not focused on that last component of that verse, as yourself. And so as we fill our cups, as we know much more in who we are, as we're confident in our overall sense of our identity, we have more to contribute to others. We can love others wholly, and we can give ourselves to God.
I love that. And you're right. We often focus on the love God and love your neighbor, but the as you love yourself is a really important thing. And for listeners who might not be super familiar with Wedgwood Christian Services, can you talk a little bit about how we integrate our Christian faith in our mental health services?
Sure. We talk often that we are distinctively Christian, and obviously that impacts who we are as employees. We believe that how we love and how we offer our services, we do with excellence. We believe that these are gifts from God and that God gave us these gifts to use to better His kingdom. Where I really see us living that out and sharing that in a community is how we support one another. We can talk to each other more about our faith and what our faith means to us. We use tools of faith like prayer and devotions to connect with one another. And yet we recognize that the clients that we serve, the families that we serve, we need to meet them where they're at. And so we listen to their stories, we listen to their faith journey if they choose to share that with us. And then if they do want to talk about that, we give them a safe space to do that. I think where we really define who we are is in our welcoming environment. One of my favorite contemporary theologians is Henry Nouwen, and he says that our greatest fear is not being welcomed. And so taking that seriously here at Wedgwood, we set up an atmosphere. We create an atmosphere of acceptance, of mutual acceptance. So many of our clients have experienced rejection in their lives, and from people who should have accepted them, who should have created a safe space for them. And so we take that very seriously, that this will be a place of acceptance, that there's room at the table for everyone.
I love that. And listening to you talk about it, it kind of goes back to the greatest commandment that Jesus talked about. You know, we love God here at Wedgwood.
Exactly.
And we love our neighbors, and that's where the services come in.
Exactly.
So you touched on it a little bit, but are spirituality and faith important things, important components for our mental health?
Well, they obviously are, and research actually proves that as well. You can find many, many articles on how a healthy spirituality actually will enhance an overall healthy mental well-being.
Yeah.
And so a little bit about that, when we, again, are connected to something greater than ourselves, when we find purpose in life, when we can understand that we can't know everything about life, that there's mystery to life, when we have a faith community, and when we have these spiritual tools in our lives that give us a healthy rhythm to our lives, something we can count on daily, obviously those are going to impact our mental health. They're going to impact our sense of peace and our sense of belonging.
It's almost like an anchor.
Exactly.
I love that.
I do want to share, though, that it needs to be a faith that doesn't weigh us down. And so what I love about the Christian faith is that there is a component to it. We believe in forgiveness and grace. When we have a faith that perhaps weighs us down, that could be partly judgmental, that develops within us or instills within us a sense of shame, then we're not going to have a healthy sense of self. And so how we practice spirituality can actually determine our mental well-being as well. So we can go to both extremes. We can focus too much on self, and then we can develop kind of like this narcissism, the self-absorption. But there's other components to faith where we're told to deny ourselves. If we take that to an extreme, then we have a sense of self-degradation and loss of self. So it's, again, having that really healthy balance.
Yeah, that's a good reminder. I mean, I've heard people say everything in moderation, and I guess that includes certain aspects of our faith and spirituality as well.
What I'd love to add, though, as well, is that I think with a healthy spirituality and definitely with a faith belief, we tend to look at life as a calling. And so then the talents that we are offering the world, we look at as gifts. And when you have a gift, you treat that with respect. You treat that as something as well that you can offer to other people. And so I also think that having that faith, we identify with our sense of purpose in what we're doing to walk alongside of other people. But as well, when you think of everything we experience in life, so of course there's the joys, there's the celebrations, right? I mean, there's those wonderful moments. But we also experience sorrow, we experience heartache, we experience trauma. I think that with faith and a healthy spirituality, we can find meaning in those things. It might not be in the moment, but as we use a different lens, as we use a spiritual lens, a Christ-like lens, we can find meaning in those hard things. We even find meaning in death, right? Because of Jesus Christ. So I do think that having spirituality just helps us have movement during those times that could be times of stagnation. And we also hold on to this hope that God is always doing something in the world. And that means he's doing something in us, even if we don't feel it.
Yeah, just that hope of knowing something is happening when it feels like nothing is happening can be enough to keep going sometimes.
Exactly. And I think that that's really important too, is to understand that faith is more than a feeling. Faith includes so much more. It encompasses belief. It encompasses behaviors. It encompasses stories, our personal story and how it intersects with God's story. It also encompasses, like I said, mystery, but also questions and I believe even doubt. And so allowing faith to, as you grow, expand in meaning, I think also will lend itself to a healthy mental well-being.
So you touched a little bit about how faith can help us in hard times, but how do we balance having faith in going through really challenging, hard seasons and potentially hearing from people in our lives that you just need to have more faith that it will get better? I mean, is faith always enough?
Well, I'm not going to say yes or no to that question.
That's kind of a big question.
What I think people need to remember and learn, and especially for Christian circles, is that when we consider our mental health, we need to also consider the science and biology behind mental health. That when we're talking about depression, when we're talking about anxiety, when we're talking about mood disorders, we also need to understand words like serotonin, how they increase and decrease in different seasons in our lives, and cortisol, how cortisol works, how generational traumas are passed on, and even how generational mental challenges grab onto our genetics, our gene pool, and are passed on. So all that is important as we consider that. But the other piece I think that I really want people to hear is when someone says to you, you just need to try harder, or if you just had a stronger faith, perhaps that would get you through this. That message that we internalize is that we need to do more. Usually when we're faced with a mental health challenge, we're trying as hard as we can.
Yeah.
And then we also internalize that we're not doing enough. And we already feel like we're not enough, period. But I also think that it's important for people who are struggling with mental health, challenges with mental health, to find professionals in that field. And so often people can run to pastors and religious leaders in times of crises. But we also have to match the problem with, I don't want to say the solution, but with those who have studied that, with those who can truly help us. And so find a professional in that area, and also understand even what the purpose of the Bible is. The Bible was not written as a psychology book. The Bible was not written to be a self-help book. It gives us wonderful nuggets of wisdom and hope. It can be very comforting in times of crises. But it was written to bring us the gospel and to bring us the message of hope in Jesus. And so we need to be a little careful how we use some of our faith tools as well.
Yeah. I mean, I guess if somebody breaks their arm, you don't tell them to pray harder for it to heal. You tell them to go to a doctor. So it should be the same for our mental health too.
Exactly. I also want to share that I advise people to stay away from those who say that they either have the answer or doing one specific thing is the answer. Because when it comes to mental health, usually, and I don't want to say the solution, but usually what helps is multi-layered. It takes time to figure that out. You might try something that works for a while and then doesn't. And so I do suggest that you guard yourself, that you practice healthy boundaries during that time, because typically there isn't one thing that will be the answer.
Yeah. Well, God created us all as these wonderful, complex, unique human beings. And so one cookie cutter approach for every person isn't going to work.
That's exactly right, Hillary.
And you talked a little bit about kind of how to protect yourself from people who might be wielding faith in maybe not a super healthy way. And this could be a whole separate conversation on its own, I'm sure. But unfortunately, it's not super uncommon for people to have experienced some people like that or some religious trauma or church hurt. And we see that a fair amount here with the kids in our residential care,
Yes, we do.
clients in our outpatient counseling program. So what encouragement or advice would you give someone who's been really hurt in the faith?
Well, I'd first say acknowledge that it's a pretty big hurt. We look to the church and we look to the religious people to walk alongside us in times of deep need. And so we also tend to assume that the church and religious people are held to a higher standard. And we expect them, honestly, to do better and to be better than secular institutions. And so then when they're not, that is devastating. But the other piece, I think, to it is that a lot of our internal resources and our external supports come from our faith and our faith tools. And so when we experience religious trauma, we in some ways are devastated. We lose the tools that have worked for us, that have given us rhythm to life, that have fed us and nourished us. And so we're kind of left with, I don't want to say nothing, but what are we going to use now? What do we have now? And so the other advice, though, leading up to that then is you haven't lost Jesus. And it's hard to separate that, honestly.
Yeah.
Because we do connect oftentimes the religious institution and leaders to Jesus. And so just to remind ourselves or to have people in our lives who can say, hey, Jesus is still with you. Jesus did not disappoint you. Jesus still loves you. Jesus is there for you. The other advice that I would give is to still find a community. Because it's important to always live in community. I would say one of the factors we're seeing so much in mental health right now is loneliness. And so how do we combat loneliness? For some of us, it's a little harder to surround ourselves with people. Some of us, it's very, very easy. But if you lose your faith community, you still need community. So find community. And I say this cautiously and carefully, but I also want to say, don't give up. Don't give up on a Christian community and on the church. You may need to step back for a while and, again, get help from professionals who are in the field of trauma, trauma-informed care, but don't give up.
I'm going to shift gears a little bit, if that's okay. When this episode releases, we'll be rounding the corner right into the holidays and into an election season. Both the holidays and elections can kind of bring out the worst in people. And it's already hard to navigate the holidays, with different family relationships, and throwing the election in is just only going to make it worse. And there are a lot of strong opinions, and I think it's extra hard because these opinions are all really tied to our belief systems, thus who we feel we are as people. And so it can be a real minefield going into some of these family gatherings and conversations. How can we protect our own mental health and well-being during these high-stress times like holidays and an election?
Sure. I'd say first and foremost, don't set yourself up for a crucial conversation if you don't want to have one. You have a lot of power in bringing up what you want to talk about. Of course, you can't control what another person brings up. But if you do not want to have a crucial conversation at a holiday event or around the time of the election, choose your topics wisely. I'd also say, though, when people do begin to talk about politics, to be curious, to ask questions of people about why they believe what they believe. So often, we just want to talk about our beliefs, period. And instead, we should be talking about the history, the story behind our beliefs. And so to, first of all, know why you believe what you believe, and to be able to articulate that. But then as you're talking to somebody who might have a different belief than you, instead of getting into a debate, ask them how they came to believe what they believe.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty important. And that often can diffuse the intensity of the emotions that are happening. And often it will also diffuse this desire we have to change somebody else. We connect at a whole different level. So I'd say be curious instead of judgmental. But I'd also say consider how social media affects you.
Yeah.
And so don't I'm going to start over there. Don't expose yourself to too much social media, especially on days that you feel fragile.
Yeah.
And on fragile days, consider what you need to do to take care of yourself. We at Wedgwood, with our staff, we have them create both a self-care plan and we have them create what's called a safety plan. With our self-care plan, that is something that everybody should be doing regularly. That's things like exercise, listening to your favorite movie, hanging out with people who build you up, hobbies. That also includes faith. That also includes perhaps Bible study groups, going to church, having devotions. So all of those actually are really important to your self-care plan. But in the moment, on fragile days, or if you are triggered by something that you see in social media or something that someone says, we also have staff create what's called a safety plan. And a safety plan is something that you use when you are experiencing that snap information that you've received. And so that then might be like, go for a 10-minute walk, or go get your favorite pop, or count to 10 even. Here at Wedgwood, we have this beautiful trail around our campus. It's called the Jesus Trail. I see staff more than ever this year walking around it this summer. And that's really, really exciting, isn't it?
Yeah.
I know. I mean, we don't even know who named it the Jesus Trail or how that developed, but having that could be part of a safety plan. I'd also say choose one social circle in your life where politics is off limits. You're just not going to talk about politics because it's not everything.
Yeah.
And I would advise, at least during the holidays, to set reasonable goals for yourself. To know what you want and expect from a holiday event, and also to set reasonable goals for what you can expect from other people. There's always going to be that person, that friend or family member who creates chaos. They've always done it, and they're probably going to do it again. So kind of expect that. There's always going to be that person who might have anger issues and explodes easily. I would say consider why that person has those behaviors and offer a little bit more grace, but don't try to fix people during the holidays. That's not the time. Remember the purpose of the holidays and set reasonable goals so that you don't set yourself up. The other piece is always practice emotional intelligence. Be self-aware, know what you're feeling, know what to do with your feelings, know if you can alter your feelings, but also know how to manage your emotions with other people, and know how your behaviors might impact someone else's emotions.
It's a good reminder that, I mean, you can only control what you do. You can't control other people or their reactions. So trying to focus on your own emotions. Something you said reminded me of the podcast we did with Miranda, talking about how it's really going with kids. And when you talked about listening to learn and listening with curiosity, just reminded me, Miranda said that people just want to feel seen and heard, and listening to ask kind of where they're coming from, as opposed to like, why are you thinking this, and being kind of judgmental about it, kind of sets it up for, oh, this person does want to hear my opinion.
Exactly.
They feel valued as a person and not attacked. Just a good reminder.
They do. And I think that what happens out of that is there's a a natural development of mutual respect and mutual support of one another when you can be curious and listen instead of attacking or asserting your own opinion.
How can our faith practices help us navigate these kind of conversations, these tough relationships, this stressful time?
Well, for me personally, it's always helped when I pray for the people in my life who I've labeled as difficult. And it's really hard to do.
Yeah.
But especially during these times, during this political season, during the holidays, to pray for them by name. So that's a spiritual practice that can kind of help you navigate that. I would say continue to do what comes normal to you to nourish your own faith and spirituality. So if you normally go to church, continue to go to church. If you normally meet with a Christian circle of friends, continue to do that. If you normally have devotions, continue to do that. Don't let those go away. Remember Christian values. Remember the value of integrity. Remember the value of compassion. Remember the value of love and hope and kindness, and continue to practice those. And again, I would say go back to the greatest commandment is love God, love your neighbor as yourself, and just perhaps let that be your motto every day.
It reminds me of, I think I saw it on Beth Moore's Instagram, the author Beth Moore. She posted something to the effect of, just remember 10 out of 10 difficult people you meet are loved by God.
Exactly.
And it's just such a good reminder that God loves all of us
He does.
the same.
He does.
We should do the same.
Exactly. Those people that just poke at you, his love for them is no different than his love for you.
LeRae, what are your top 3 things you want people to know about faith and spiritual practices and how it works with their mental health?
Sure. That's a big question, right? Couple things. I would say number 1, that the symbiotic relationship involves being still and being still before God. And we all know that verse from the Bible, be still and know that I am God. And the actual Hebrew translation of being still is let go of the grip.
Ooh, interesting.
Yeah, I know. A lot of people don't know that. And so for me, it's knowing that you don't have control of everything. And while we can work hard to have a healthy mental well-being, while we can have a positive spirituality and a healthy spirituality, we don't have control of where life is going to bring us, and we don't have control of what is going to happen in the next hour. And to just let go of needing to know and needing to rely on yourself. That because you don't have to.
Yeah.
I would say the second thing is to know that you can find beauty and meaning even in the life that isn't the one you had planned. And so all of us have these goals and these dreams, and no one is going to get the life that they actually dreamed of completely. And so know that you still use a lens to look for beauty and purpose and meaning and God in it. And I guess third, I would say you can never practice too much compassion. You can never practice too much compassion for yourself and for others. But you don't have compassion for others if you have not done that self-care and you have not learned to fill your cup. So practice self-compassion as well. Learn to forgive yourself. Know you're going to make multiple mistakes during the day, and that's okay because you're extravagantly loved by God. And so we have a God of second, third, fourth, fifth chances. And God is our comforter, and he will get us through it. And so he also gives us the example of compassion. He's compassionate with us.
I love that. Your second point reminded me of something a former coworker, Gary, once said. he was referencing the verse in, I can't remember where it's from, but in all things give thanks.
Yes.
He pointed out, he said, I'm very grateful that it says in all things and not for all things. Which I thought was a really great reminder that you don't have to be necessarily thrilled with where you're at,
Not at
but
all.
there's always something to be thankful for, to find beauty in, to see God in. So those are great reminders, LeRae. Thank you so much. Wedgwood Christian Services is committed to extending God's love through providing our community comprehensive mental health services. One super easy way you can support us is to rate and review the podcast wherever you listen, so 5 stars on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. This helps us get the show in front of more people who need to hear hopeful and helpful conversations. Stay hopeful, stay helpful, and let's have another coffee break soon.